Good morning, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Taiwan-Philippines International Conference on Slopeland Disaster Prevention. It is our greatest honor to invite you all to Taipei, Taiwan, to join us for the conference. 各位来宾，您好，欢迎您莅临由行政院农业委员会水土保持局所主办的台非坡地国际灾害研讨会。感谢各位来宾的热烈参与。现在会议正式开始。Now, please welcome the Deputy Minister of Council of Agriculture in Executive Yuan, Dr. Li Tuizhi, to first lecture for the opening remarks.
今天在这边，我们非常欢迎来自于菲律宾、越南、澳洲、印尼各界的学者，还有包含我们灾防办，还有包含我们中央的这个相关的部会的团队，以及我们水保局这边哈，那一起来这个今天也感谢我们台大的周老师，还有我们冯甲周老师，还有我们成大詹老师等等，都一起来到这个学术的盛会。那我们都知道，其实就拿今年来讲，台湾大家都有一张图，把今年这个台风路线图哈，全部重叠到这个我们的地图上面来看之后，觉得大概几乎所有棒球的变化球的球路都可以看得出来哈，不管它是那个 slider 还是这个 sink， 什么都来了，反而没有成为台风的一个热带低压，竟然造成了台湾0823这样的一个区域性的这个大豪雨，这实在是始料未及哈。那我想，在今天的这样的一个，不管是我们学术的研究也好，还是我们行政方面的灾防应变也好，就是在这样一个非常难以预料，但是又这个充满了这个需要极端应变的这样的一个环境里面。那我们水保局其实过去在这个长期以来，对于不管是这个几乎是研发的方面哈，科技方面也是一直跟学术界密切配合，可以说是走在前端哈。那但是在应用的方面，当然也一定是这个把它直接放在我们这个防灾救灾的这个第一线，而且还不只是如此。把这样的一个科技应用在我们防灾的第一线之外，其实最重要的当然是要跟我们所有的人民的生命财产来做结合哈。所以当要用的把这些科技硬体要用得好，也结合了我们整个，比如说像我们防灾社区、防灾专员这样一个整个人际网络的结合。我想这样的一个硬软的这样的实力的结合，才是我们这个防灾一直现在正要走的这样的一个方向哈。那其实还更不止如此哈，更不止如此。我想未来我也这个很期盼水保局这相关的这个防救灾，还有包含更进一步的这样的一个预测的这样的一个科技，能够跟我们农业的政策相关的国土的政策有更加的结合。比如说，对于这样一个灾害前示地区的一个更广泛的一个统计预测跟这样的一个规划，能够跟未来我们要上路的这个整个国土规划能够结合起来。那对于我们这样一个不管是局部性也好，区域性也好，这样一个气象剧烈变化的这样的预测，也能够成为我们农业政策的一个支柱哈。这个短期来讲，可以提供农民、渔民的这样的一个防灾的一个准备；长期来讲，也可以对于我们现在正在推动的农业政策，包含农业保险，能够提供更好的这样一个数据，来提供更适当的一个费率跟更多这个 insurance policy 这样一个推出哈。所以这个我常常都跟我们水保局的团队开玩笑哈，阿林不是刚才要做岗顶的哈。从一开始做这个治山防洪，到后来这个要搞这个农村社区发展，到现在还要教我们农村做生意，实在是太厉害了。所以这个今天我们在这边 讨论这样的一个防灾救灾的一个相关的科技。我们也感谢我们来自于这个整个泛太平洋地区的所有的贵宾的能够一起来参与，贡献你们的智慧。那我们也希望整个这样的一个讨论，能够对于我们的这个整个农业政策，对于我们整个的国土政策，对于我们整个国家社会未来的发展，能够提供更多智慧的结晶。那希望大家在这边除了贡献之外，自己也能够得到很多的收获。谢谢大家，谢谢。
Thanks to Dr. Li Tuizhi. Now, please welcome the Director General of Office of Disaster Management in Executive Yuan, Dr. Wu Wutai, to address the speech. 好，我们邀请行政院灾防办吴武泰主任。
特别感谢我们今天这个我们农委会吕副主委来这个举行这个开幕式那另外我们这几年在台湾的一个整个防灾的进步里面我想那个水保局李局长他的一个付出是有目共睹。那我们 NCT 陈伟陈主任现在把我们防灾科技也都整合得非常好那我们台大的周仲豪周老师就是过去我在台北市服务的时候也都是帮助台北市很多的这些机制的一个建立那包括我们逢甲大学那个周天勇周老师在防灾产业这个部分把这个产官学都整合得很好。那也今天也特别看到我们成大的这个詹老师也来莅临。我想在刚刚这个副主任委员所提到的这些台湾这几年有很多不同类型的这个灾害。当然这里面我们在这个9年前大概就是莫拉克给我们很大的一个震撼除了一些这个平常可能看到一些崩塌了那很重要的就是土石流对我们这块土地的一个冲击所以我们也在高雄科工馆有一个大概水保局付出很多把它呈现得很好对莫拉克给我们的一个教训跟启示当然我们在明年有很重要的活动就是我们在921的20周年跟莫拉克的10周年所以我们把这2个主轴在台湾里面比较属于经常性我们要面对灾害的一个冲击，以及怎么样去提升整个国内的能量。那我们有过去所碰到的一些属于我们的这不能讲悲情而是我们必须要去很诚实面对的这个我们的惨况。那经过了我们这么多年其实大家进步了非常多。那在我今年参加 APEC 里面其实有非常多的国家也觉得台湾怎么有很多的不管是防灾科技这个部分包括我们的人文人性的这个部分，我们的机制非常的软性，而且跟民众已经有很多的这个贴近了。那这些呢都是在我们这个很多的老师学界里面大家非常用心的去做一些研究探讨田野调查。那当然很重要就是在我们主政的这个水保局这个李局长带领下把我们这个力量把它扩散所以刚刚除了李副主委所提到的我们这些防灾的机制以外另外水保局大概优于这个是我这半年来的观察就在这个防灾专员的部分大概2700多位其实已经深入到我们各社区。那这个呢也是在我们未来在整个那个国家的基本计划里面，我们把它当成一个很重要的主轴就是在各部门里面当然除了行政机关政府部门以外另外就是在我们这个一般的这个社区发展里面把它列入一个主轴。那最近这几年有很多的县市大概它的社区有跟联合国有蛮多的这些联盟大概有经过了一些这个大家的互相经验这个交流以后，其实都有一些认证的机制那这个认证机制其实在台湾也是一个很重要，在走出我们到这个国际社会里面，让很多国际社会愿意跟我们交流 我想这个是一个主动式的互动的交流。那这些呢，就是呈现出我们平常很多的作为里面不是只有一个所谓理论上的空谈，而是一个很务实啊，我们把它做得出有自己的一个台湾的这个品牌啊那今年啊，诚如刚刚那个李副主委有特别提到有很多的台风啊，突然间都会以前我的感觉说，台风如果是360度转，还可以转2圈啊那就是102年有2个台风是这样但是那2个台风之后呢，好像都没有那今年又有一些台风这个走向特别可能是我们 NCDR 的陈主任有特别用心的把它加持，所以他就跑到日本跟韩国。因为 APEC 的时候，那个日本的学者坐我旁边，我们在看那个台风我说那个好像燕子又跑到你们那边去了所以他每天都很紧张。那我想这个部分就是我们有做好万全的准备这是必要的。那再来就是说，这些天然的灾害或者是比较重大的这个灾害，其实我们必须要有能力去面对它。所以我们在整个准备跟应变这个部分其实在我们台湾已经是非常受到国际的一个肯定跟瞩目。那在我们这个整个减灾里面就是要把我们这个经验尤其是我们今天有很多来自菲律宾澳洲跟这个越南那这些也都是我们的好朋友好伙伴。那这些经验里面其实大家在分享过程里面，或许可以发现大家事实上那个心意是相通的因为看起来好像都属于比较南岛语系的所以大家有些作为在研究的那个思维里面架构其实大家看起来那个逻辑上都可以很直接去做对接我想感谢这个水保局这几年来非常用心在这方面的一个投入。那另外我们这个农委会这个李副主委也特别的来大力支持那我们今天这个研讨的活动都能够很顺利然后大家也都能够收获满满，谢谢。
Thanks to Dr. Wu Tai. Now, please welcome the Director of National Science and Technology Center for Disaster Reduction, Professor Chen Hongyu, to address the speech. 我们邀请 NCDR 陈宏宇主任。
Deputy Minister Dr. Lee from the Agricultural Council, Director Lee from the Soil Water Conservation Bureau, and Dr. Wu from the Executive Yuan, and Professor Zhou, Professor Zhang, and Professor both of Zhou. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to have this address. I think I am quite impressive because today Taiwan and the Philippines have a very special conference and special for talk, landslide and debris flow, the disaster. Actually, I just come back from Philippines on last Friday. I have a very strong feeling, and special 2006 Jinsogong typhoon, Jinsogong landslide, and I think have around 1,000, more than 1,000 people pass away. And special in this September, Mangerhat, Sanju typhoon, Mangerhat typhoon attacked to Philippines. I think this year probably Philippines is much more lucky than Japan. Right? Japan have 11 typhoons attack Japan in all the Pacific 25 typhoons, and have a half typhoon attack to the Japan, but to the Philippines only 2 or 3. That's only. And special Mangerhat gave a stronger attack in Philippines. Until now, still have some disaster area not recovered yet. So last week I went there. I talked with some official, the people, special in the emergency operation center, because I work for the emergency operation center in Taiwan, and so we have a very good communication. And special, I think, use this day's talk and Special Soil Water Conservation Bureau. They invite some of the people, especially from Philippines, from Vietnam, and from Australia, and the other countries. And you are very special experts. Special, I saw your talk. It's quite interesting, very interesting, and including deep-seated landslide, including some threshold of the rainfall prediction. I think it's very useful for all the Pacific countries. So I hope all the participants in today's conference, you can get a very, very good experience. So I hope this conference today is very successful and all the people healthy, especially whales. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks to Professor Chen Hongyu. Now, please welcome the Professor of the College of Forestry and Natural Resources in University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Dr. Nathaniel Bentayang, to address the speech.
Good morning. Allow me to read from my notes. Dr. Lee Tueche, Deputy Minister of the Council of Agriculture. Dr. Wu Tai, Director of the Office of Disaster Prevention. Dr. Chen Hongyu, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Director of the National Science and Technology Center for Disaster Reduction, and many other VIPs from the different agencies in Taiwan. And I'd like to mention our esteemed Professor, Professor Ben Zhou, who we believe is the catalyst of this collaboration between the Philippines and Taiwan. We, as mentioned by previous speakers, we share many similarities in terms of geology, in terms of the weather, and also we share typhoons and the impacts of climate change, extreme temperature, extreme precipitation. Our partnership is called VOTE. V for volcanoes, O for oceans, T for typhoons, and E for earthquakes. And this is the basis of our scientific collaboration. We are very happy to know that Taiwan has invested tremendously in the study of these disasters, and not only in technology, not only in software development, in instruments. Taiwan has put premium in knowledge generation. And these are the things we would like to learn from your experience. And on behalf of the delegation, the scientists and researchers from the Philippines, in the various agencies, we have here our colleagues from the Volcanology Institute, colleagues from the University of the Philippines. We would like to extend our deepest gratitude to you all for this collaboration, for this partnership. We hope that this partnership will continue, and so that we can together develop models, develop the tools for disaster prevention. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Professor Bentayang and all lecturers' encouragement. Now, we are going to take a group photo. So I would like to invite all the honorable guests to come to the stage. 那麻烦前2排的贵宾，我们到台上来拍个团体照，谢谢。Okay, thank you. Okay, before the conference start, I would like your help from every speaker. Our time for every speech is 15 minutes and 5 minutes for questions. And we'll ring the bell on 15 minutes and 20 minutes to let you know. And we also will use this small board to help you to know how many times remain. Thank you. The first session today is the slopland disaster. The chairperson is Dr. Wang Jinglun, the Deputy Director General of Soil and Water Conservation Bureau. Please welcome Dr. Wang.
Thank you. Dear distinguished guests, good morning. I'm Jinglun Wang, Deputy Director General of Soil and Water Conservation Bureau in Taiwan. It's my honor to be here with you. I'm going to chair this session. So this is the first session of conference. We'll have 3 speech in this session, slopland disaster. So due to the time limitation, so I suggest to keep your question to the end of the session after 3 presentations. Thank you. So our first speaker is Dr. Yin Xiaoyuan. He is the director of the Debris Flow Disaster Prevention Center of Soil and Water Conservation Bureau in Taiwan. His topic is non-structural countermeasures against debris flow disaster in Taiwan. So he will introduce the job Soil and Water Conservation Bureau have done on the forwarding of debris flow, including rain-based debris flow warning model and the web-based decision support system. So let's welcome Dr. Yin.
Thank you very much for the introduction from the Deputy Director, Dr. Wang. My name is Samuel, and I'm from the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau. Today, I'm going to talk about the non-structural countermeasures, but last night I just added some materials. So not only for the debris flow disasters, but I added some materials related to the large-scale landslide, which is conducted by the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau in recent years. So this slide shows the tropical cyclone frequencies. We can see clearly that the dark red represents the high frequency of the tropical cyclones. And then it's easy for us to locate Philippines and Taiwan, both in Vietnam. So all the countries, Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam, are prone to typhoon disasters, but not this year, because this year the typhoon just go to Japan mostly. And I just look on the newspapers from the left-hand side. So in this August, so the tropical depression just caused debris flow in southern part of Taiwan. You can see that from the pictures. and blocked all the roads. From the right-hand side, during the September, the typhoon Mangkhut just caused landslide, killing a lot of people in central Philippines. So this is another debris flow pictures recorded by the unmanned aerial vehicle, which caused by the typhoon Nemador in 2011. From this picture, we know that to the downstream areas, debris flow usually caused the sediment deposit. So the shape is like the fan. We also call it the fan areas because of the mild slope. So usually people live in the downstream areas. So the fan areas we also call our affected area. People who live there is the target we are going to protect. So the slide shows the framework, how we deal with the debris flow management in Taiwan. So usually when we are doing the hazard assessment, we have to ask ourselves 3 questions: where, when, and how big. So in Taiwan, where are the debris flows? According to the previous investigation, more than 10 years, we have more than 1,700 we call potential debris flow creeks, meaning those creeks are prone to debris flow disasters. So since each creek has the downstream affected fan area, so people who live there is our protected targets. So every year before the flood season, which starts from May in Taiwan, we work with the local government to come up with the inventory, the name list who live in those affected areas. So traditionally, we use a lot of engineering construction to prevent from the debris flow disasters, but they will cost a lot of time and money. So recently, the government just turned to the software, including the land use restriction and relocation of the local people, but people don't like that. Sometimes they will protest against those 2 measures. So the only way for the government in Taiwan is to evacuate people who live in the areas prone to landslide and debris flows during the emergency. So if we want to avoid false alarm, a reliable early warning system is very important. So now the early warning system mainly based on the localized rainfall model, which is derived by the Professor Zhang from Cheng Kung University. Now he's here. So this model just considering 2 indexes, including the rainfall intensity as well as the effective accumulated rainfall. We use the word effective because we consider not only the real-time rainfall, but the preceding rainfall for 7 days. So after statistic using about the historic events, about the rainfall and debris flows, we choose the dotted line, which is the 70 probability as the critical line to set up the criteria in different places. So usually we receive over 500 automatic rain gauges all around Taiwan, which is set up by the Central Weather Bureau, Water Resources Agency, as well as the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau. But recently, we think that sometimes the rain gauge is too far away from the debris flow sites. So this year, we just cooperate with the Central Weather Bureau. They have the very good radar-derived rainfall, which supply better spatial resolution. The resolution in the space is about 1.3 cross 1.3 kilometer in space. So not only the traditional automatic rain gauge, we have better radar-derived rainfall. It's 2 parallel, so we can look at 2 different kinds of rainfall thresholds. So for the debris flow criteria, which differ from place to place and from 200 to 600 millimeter. So usually 2 stages we issue the debris flow warnings. The first one, when the predict rainfall in certain area is over the threshold in this area. Then we issue the yellow warning for persuasive evacuation to the local government. The second stage is when the real rainfall is over the threshold in certain area. Then we issue the red warning for mandatory evacuation. So each, we talk about the potential debris flow creeks. So each creeks, we have come up with the evacuation plan, including the evacuation route map, like this one. So from the map, the resident is easy to locate their house, the location of potential creek. Also, the very important one is the shelter. All the information about the shelter is here, the capacity, address, contact number, something like that. So every year, also before the flood season, we work with the local government. We do a lot of drills. Even the military soldiers join us to do the drills. It's very important to practice because practice makes perfect. So not only the local government, we also work with the local people. We train a lot of local people and turn them into our debris flow volunteer specialists. Now the number is over 2,800 in Taiwan, all around Taiwan. So almost every areas prone to debris flows has at least one debris flow volunteer specialist. You can see that they take the measurements using the simplified rain gauge and feedback to our system to issue the warnings. Also, they help the local government to transmit all the debris flow warnings and feedback the disasters information. So these volunteer specialists like the seed. So we put them into the communities. They transfer their neighbors. They transfer their families. They transfer the communities. So all the communities become the disaster-resistant community because all the people are well trained into different groups. So during the emergency, people know what to do. So now we have more than 550. We also can say that it's a kind of resilient communities. So they know what to do. They can do that themselves during the emergency. So recently, the Taiwan government, we take advantage of the public warning system to issue the different kinds of warnings, including debris flows. So the cell broadcast technology is applied. So we can send out message, maybe 100,000 messages in seconds, which is much faster than the traditional cell phone message. So which make those warning information more accessible to the public, especially during the emergency period. Also, when you got the message, if you are in the field, you can open your smartphone and then open the free apps about the debris flow prevention. You just locate yourself, locate those potential creeks like the blue lines. If the government issue the red or yellow warnings, the blue will turn red and yellow. Also, we can locate the nearest shelters. So the system will calculate the distance automatically between you and the shelters. So you know everything. You know what to do in the field. So this is another case in 2015 in northern part of Taiwan caused by the typhoon. And we can see the sediment, debris just coming down to this is the fan area, to the village. So buried all the houses there during the morning. And then after that, I took a picture because I went to the field. 15 houses were buried by the debris materials, but the 47 residents were evacuated beforehand, so no one got hurt. Because the village head is one of our volunteer specialists. Also, this village is one of our resilient, disaster resilient communities because they are well trained before. So after we implemented those mechanisms about evacuation and early warning, so we can see the red line, which refers to the number of casualties and wounded of the debris flow versus typhoons. So it just decreased a lot. So this mechanism has been proved effective in the past 10 years. So the second part of my talk, I would like to talk about the Typhoon Morak. Because in year 2009, we have a typhoon which is the most devastating typhoon ever hit Taiwan, the Typhoon Morak. We face a lot of challenges. So the maximum accumulated rainfall over 3,000 millimeters in central part of Taiwan and caused about 700 casualties. So although we issued the debris flow warnings, we find out that over 9,000 people were evacuated because of the debris flow warnings, and among them, over 1,000 people escaped from the possible casualties, which is effective. But in southern part of Taiwan, we face another challenge we call large-scale landslide in Xiaolin village. The village just buried by the deep-seated landslide in one event and killing more than 400 casualties in one incident. So after that, the Director General Lee just leading a new project we called Comprehensive Plan of the Large-Scale Landslide Hazard Mitigation under Climate Change Impact. So this is the first stage of the project from 2017 to 2020. The budget is $110 million US. So after that, we come up with the framework, how we deal with the deep-seated landslide. We use the risk assessment procedure. First, identification, using the LiDAR techniques to identify the potential areas. Then, use the analysis, considering different indexes to ranking all the potential areas. We have the priorities. So different priorities have different treatment, like engineering, resilient training, evacuation drills. For example, this year we focus on the monitoring ways, how to monitor those potential areas. So for example, this is from the left-hand side. This is a case about deep-seated landslide. So from the aerial photo, nothing particular. But if we remove all the vegetation using LiDAR techniques, we find out some scars. It's easy for us to zoning the potential areas. So we do a lot of geophysical explorations, dig a lot of boring holes to take out those cones, to have the geological profile underground. And then we deploy different kinds of sensors in the field, try to figure out the mechanism of the large-scale landslide. So for the middle risk, we use the surface displacement measurements, mainly focus on the GPS, rain gauge, and extensometer. This is the picture in the field. So this picture shows that we have very relationship between the displacement as well as the rainfall patterns. So for the low risk, we use the TCP INSAR, the SAR image analysis, which is a very good approach to evaluate the activities. Also, the SAR image can figure out the type of the landslide. For example, the blue dots represents the sinking area, and the yellow and the orange represents the uplift. So from the profile AA prime, it's easy for us to recognize this landslide belongs to the rotational landslide. So easy for us to know the mechanism. So in the future, we would like to set up the smart disaster mitigation system, not only debris flows, but the large-scale landslide. So finally, we have some experiences, more than 20 years, to dealing with the debris flow disasters. And we try to borrow this kind of experiences, transfer to deal with the large-scale landslide using different kinds of new techniques, LiDAR, GPS, SAR, etc. But the last one is the most important one, because the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau Taiwan here, we try to sharing our experiences and exchange the experiences with other countries. So we would like to stand with you together try to protect the people in mountain areas, especially from the landslide and debris flow disasters. So this is the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yin's excellent presentation. Let's give Dr. Yin a big hand again. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Dax, Chief Science Research Specialist of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. So Dr. Dax's specialty is landslide modeling and the GIS-based geohard modeling. So today, his topic is warning system for shallow translation and deep-seated landslide. So we hope the warning system for landslide for our country could benefit from Dr. Dax's sharing. Okay, let's welcome Dr. Dax.
Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to thank the organizer for inviting us and sharing and learning ideas about landslides. Okay, we have some project-based activities that led to eventually formulating warning systems, one for shallow and the other one is for deep-seated landslides. Okay, the first one is actually, we'll talk about the shallow-seated, or shallow landslides, mostly translational landslides. We made this project under the JAXA Sentinel Asia Success Story Project, wherein we use, since in the Philippines, some areas we have very scarce rain gauges, especially radar are very few. So we eventually use a GS map, a global rainfall watch, published every hour, but on a 10 by 10 kilometer grid. So then we have to calibrate it locally to make it operational. Okay, with the GS map as an input for the model for the precipitation, it was patterned of some studies in Japan wherein it's actually operational, wherein they use a ground radar and the RBFN methodology. So we adopted the RBFN methodology, but then since we don't have a lot of ground-based radar and rainfall stations, so we use the GS map. So in the Philippines, first we have to calibrate the GS map to our local rain gauges. So after calibrating, we gather, it's a certain area, gather all the rainfall with no landslides and with landslides. So eventually plotted them in a graph, and using RBFN network, we establish some threshold based on the activity or the history of the landslide. So this model is more of a historical or statistical landslide model. And we use the hourly rainfall from GS map, from satellite-based rainfall, and cumulative soil moisture index. So with that kind of data set, with the soil moisture index, we calibrated using the tank model system, wherein the hourly rainfall and then the round out. So you have the more or less the moisture index. So with that, the hourly rainfall and the soil moisture index happening every hour. So we have we call this a snake line, wherein it monitors the health of the certain pixel, the moisture index and the hourly rainfall. So through every hour data set, there will become a time that the rainfall is so high and soil moisture is so high, and eventually will cross the threshold path, and wherein we can declare it is sort of a warning system for that. So the system is actually web-based, and we tried it in one area, municipality. So the web interface will look like this. So since we are using a GS map of 10 by 10 kilometer grid, so each picture are calibrated, wherein the colors represent the soil moisture, the snake line. So if this critical, it will become red. So if it is before and orange and yellow are the low. So eventually, this system will be used by the stakeholders to more or less see what kind of threshold or activity they're to in with that area. But then the problem is it's a 10 by 10 kilometer mesh. So for a much detailed one, we still need to do additional data set. Okay, initially we tried it in a volcano, since we are from Volcanology Institute. We tried them to a volcano to predict lahars for that one. So a different threshold for lahar. And for that warning system, it will look like this, but then we have only few sites as a pilot sites, but then we focused on Rizal province for that focus sites. So this the sites. So for example, this is the warning system dashboard, wherein if there's no warning or no landslides, it's all green. So eventually, depending on the threshold or the snake line, so each pixel have its own snake line where it monitors the soil moisture index and the cumulative rainfall, and eventually put them in a different color. Okay, that's one example. This is an actual example of Rizal province, wherein if you have each pixel, it automatically emails all the recipients that your current area is under red. So there's a real-time email system for this. And eventually, we engage the LGU of Rizal and involve other there agencies to more or less roll out the system in Rizal province. And they use the system, one of the DRR office, Disaster Reduction Office, they use the system online for their landslide warning. So in that case, so this is like another sort of a snake line, wherein you have to put a certain thresholds, and if it crosses this threshold, they will eventually issue warning. So even in that case, it's probably around 2 years old or 3 years old data set. So probably there are around 5 events, and I think 3 of that events were predicted quite good. But the problem is, since it's a satellite-based data, so the low precipitation is quite very difficult to predict. The quality of data are quite poor when the rainfall millimeters are quite low. For strong precipitation, the data from satellite are quite correlatable with the ground data set. Okay, in that conclusion for that kind of work, we tested in Rizal, and it was good, and being in operation, and quite successful on heavy rainfall, but smaller rainfall is quite difficult still. And we use this for sustainability. We involve the local agencies. Well, now let's move on to the other project that we have established. Initially, it was a project between the UP Electronics, Civil Engineering, and Geology. They more or less is a landslide warning system for 50 deep-seated landslide sites. Okay, for a deep-seated landslide, it's not translational, so we need a special instrument to monitor the subsurface. So in that project, it was conceptualized to put a borehole with the different tilt meters per section, per 1 meter section. So depending on the area, some are 50 meter deep, some are 20 or 15. So depending on the area to be studied. And eventually, all of this data then are being transferred to the central receiving station and being monitored its health. Okay, so come up with an experiment with the soil and put them some sensors, and if the slope move, eventually it will be monitored using this tilt. So that's kind of a concept of monitoring the deep-seated movement. And it chooses tilt meters and moisture sensors, and a pack every 1 meter grid. So every 1 meter is its own movement and being monitored. So at least in each site, at least two boreholes were put in order to monitor the strength of the slope of the site, and being powered by solar powered, and data is being transmitted through SMS. Okay, these are examples of some of the sites wherein it has a own rain gauge and data sending and power system. So currently we have 50 sites in the Philippines scattered throughout. But of course, again, these 50 are not so many. So the recent landslide that occurred in the Philippines that was discussed before, unfortunately, we don't have sensors there, so we cannot monitor that one. Okay, so what are the thresholds for this deep-seated landslide? We use 3 different sets for threshold: wind gauge rainfall, subsurface deformation, also the surfacial displacement, and of course some of the earthquakes. So with that, we establish a warning system for rainfall triggers. So it's quite of a cumulative measurement of all this data set. So there's a threshold again, like for example for rainfall, we set for initial threshold, and depending on the cumulative rainfall, if it breaks through the threshold, we issue warning initially on the rainfall. And for the tilt meters, subsurface below, initially, for example, this original tilt position and then some movement. So depending on the velocity of its tilt and movement, there's a certain threshold, then we issue also a warning for that. And for surfacial crack, so we don't have a automated measurement of surfacial crack, so we let the stakeholders, so we form a landslide committee in that specific area, and they're the one doing the measurement and visually inspecting the sites. So for that, we also use it for warning system. Again, for the earthquakes, just initially from the model, but then you want to use a new mark method for that in the future. So now with that different inputs, we develop a warning system that is being used by the stakeholders from 0, 81, and 82, and corresponding recommended response from the local government and recommended response from the affected community. So A3 is actually the evacuation phase, and initially some warning phase. Okay, so this monitoring dashboard, more or less it is, we look it in the dashboard, and we issue a warning based on the events. And at the same time, we use AUV to map the local areas wherein we plot the scarp, potential scarp, and also the affected community, and we also identify the people who are living there. And we use it for warning and evacuation. Some of the slopes we measure, or we are even seeing some creeping evidences. Like for example, this tree, it progresses from creeping. And we have a map given to the residents or the community when we map the potential cracks. They're being monitored, the location of the sensors, and the community that will be affected. And also, we engage community. We form a landslide committee. We organize a landslide monitoring committee to measure local displacement and also warn their own communities. So we have this operations manual for local landslides committee. Okay. So every time there is a warning, we issue bulletins. So each bulletin, it contains what we observe on the different data set. At the same time, what will be the recommended action. So it's a web-based system. When there's a warning, it automatically emails the DRR agencies and the local communities. Okay, so I think for our ways forward is to, since some of the sites for the pilot site for shallow landslide, we want to have it operational in nationwide, but we only have a pilot site. And also we want to improve the warning system, since it's only a 10 by 10 kilometer grid based on the limit of the GS map. So we want to have a localized landslide hazard map using a SIN map, and probably use other high resolution data that we have in order to more or less have an exact prediction of where the landslide will occur. Okay, I think that will be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Dr. SM presentation. So in this session, our next speaker is Professor Ramos from University of the Philippines, Diliman. Professor Ramos is well known for her expertise in active tectonic and geomorphology. So today she will talk on the geohazard risk assessments in southern Laguna de Bay. Philippines use semi-quantitative analysis and the GIS technique. So it goes without saying that the hazard risk assessment is very important. It could elevate the ability of authority of slowland disaster prevention and the mitigation on hazard risk assessment and management. So let's welcome Professor Ramos.
Thank you, Director Wang. Thank you for that kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My presentation essentially summarizes what we've done so far, and some are still ongoing in terms of hazard assessment and risk analysis in this relatively populated region in the Philippines. I'm presenting this on behalf of colleagues and students from the National Institute of Geological Sciences and the School of Environmental Science and Management at the University of the Philippines. And as with Taiwan, we are very much familiar with the exposure of the Philippines to both geological and hydrometeorological hazards. And we are quite acquainted with this map here to the left. And these are the tropical cyclones in the Northwest Pacific between 1980 and 2005. And we can no longer see much of the Philippines as well as Taiwan. In fact, there are at an average 19 to 20 tropical cyclones that enter the Philippine area of responsibility every year. And half, or sometimes more than half, of these tropical cyclones make landfall. And to your right is an earthquake map, or a seismicity map of the archipelago. And we can clearly see the density of earthquakes are influenced by surrounding major subduction zones: Manila Trench, Philippine Trench, and this Philippine Fault Zone, which is composed of segments that traverse the entire archipelago. And it's because of this geographic and geotectonic setting that the Philippines is pretty much exposed to a lot of natural hazards. And so let's focus our attention now in Laguna de Bay. So Laguna de Bay is the largest lake in the Philippines. It's in Luzon Island. It's east of Metro Manila. So Metro Manila is here. So this is Laguna de Bay. And this region is not only critical because of its food security and food supply, but also in the context of disaster risk reduction and management, because it's very close to potential sources of hazards. In fact, south of the lake, there is an active volcano here. So this is actually a caldera lake. So this is Taal volcano. The most recent eruption is in the 1970s. And then west of this western lobe of the lake, there is an active fault here, and we call it the West Valley Fault. And we think that its potential earthquake will, of course, affect these urban settlements that's close to the lake. And with such geotectonic and geologic conditions, the communities bordering the lake are exposed to a lot of hazards. Okay, so liquefaction, seisures, landslides, and so on. So for this for this presentation, I will be focusing on the southern part of the lake, where most of the communities reside, or there are relatively denser populations here. And this southern part almost has, flooding is almost a regular thing in this southern part, and it's also because of the urban development. So in 2014, so these are the impacts of the typhoon Ramasun, which has a local name of Glenda. It has also impacted one of the campuses of the University of the Philippines. This is in Los Baños. And more recently, last year, so Tropical Depression Maring, as we call it locally, has affected this Calamba City and another municipality. So aside from flood events, landslides are also common, and one of the more recent occurrences is this landslide along Mount Makiling. It's near the vicinity of the UP campus, and it occurred because of the precipitation brought about by Typhoon Lan, or locally known as Paulo. And because of such occurrences of these landslides, it's imperative that we do continuous monitoring, continuous hazard assessment, and risk analysis. And I think these assessments and analysis should be dynamic and should not be constrained to a particular time. So we should keep on developing or improving this analysis. So for this area, I mentioned that we're focused on the southern part of Laguna de Bai, and you can note here the population in those areas. And as geologists, so we are also interested, or we are actually interested in the more fundamental questions like what factors would influence the landslide occurrences in this area. And we've noted that in general, the area is a volcanic terrain. So we are interested in is it the steepness of the slope, is it the type of rock, or is it the thickness of the soil that influences, or would largely influence the landslide occurrences in the area. And so we conduct field surveys, geology, geomorphology. We conducted household interviews. We did some processing with DEMs. And we applied some semi-quantitative techniques, in particular the analytic hierarchy process. It's useful in terms of analyzing multiple sets of factors. Okay, and most of the outputs of this work is GIS based. So we also did some GIS analysis. So just to give you a background on the rock types in the study area, so it's a volcanic terrain. The ages range from Pliocene to recent, and these are the lithologies that we noted, like andesites, scorias, tuffs, and different types of tuffs. And we were trying to figure out which areas would the rock type play a role in the frequency of the landslide occurrences. And for the landslide susceptibility assessment, so I mentioned earlier that we tried to utilize this semi-quantitative technique. It's called the analytic hierarchy process. It's developed by Professor Sati in the 1970s, and it's very effective in assessing several criterion. And it derives ratio scale, so this is the semi-quantitative part. It tries to assign numbers to particular subjective judgments. So how does this model work? So there is, this is like a simplified model of the AHP. So there's a goal, like in this case, the landslide occurrence, the criterion, what would be the factors that would influence the landslide occurrence. So this could be the rock type, this could be the slope angle, and what would be the subclasses or the sub-factors that would help us evaluate the several criteria. So for example, under geology, we have andesites, we have tuffs, and so on. So it gives us a fairly quantitative analysis of the different factors. And this is just an example of what we can derive from the AHP. So these are the several factors. So after a pairwise comparison, so each factor is compared with another factor, and we come up with this rating. And at least for this ongoing work, so it appears that gradient and the lithology would strongly influence the failure of the slope. So these are the intrinsic factors, and we come up with this map showing susceptibilities to landslides, regardless of the trigger, whether it's rainfall-induced or they're earthquake-induced. So this is an example of the landslide susceptibility map that we have generated for the southern part. So the red areas are the high susceptibility areas. I failed to plot the inventory here, but from the landslide observations, observations from the field, so they fairly coincide with the high to moderate susceptibility zones. So for flood susceptibility, we adopt the maps from mandated agencies, and we just try to modify them based on what we observe on the field. So we adopted the flood susceptibility map, as well as the liquefaction susceptibility map, which is mainly dependent on the rock type. Okay. And so we follow the standardized procedure of the National Economic and Development Authority of the Philippines. So they published a set of guidelines in 2008, and so as to streamline and standardize the way we do this disaster risk assessments in the Philippines. So after hazard characterization, which I've shown earlier, so we can now move on to consequence analysis, or the estimation of fatality or property damage or whatever purpose, and then for the risk estimation, and of course for risk evaluation. Okay, so of course, all of these, the significance of all these studies would be for prioritization of resources, prioritization of efforts in those high risk areas. So for the consequence analysis and risk estimation, so these are the simplified calculations for the estimation of fatality and estimation of property damage. I will not go through the details of these numbers, but if you're interested in the factors or the ratios or the coefficients, the NEDA report is publicly available, and you can download it online. So after the computing for the consequence per hazard, so we can now compute for the risk, and for the risk, it's of course important to know the probability, and these probabilities have been established as well, or computed as well, by the national agencies. So I'll just briefly show you the maps that we've generated for the study area. So for the landslide risk, so this is a risk of fatality per year. The letters are too small, but it just says, for example, for the yellow parts, it's 1 in every one person in every 500 persons for that area. So this is the risk of fatality per year and the risk of property damage per year, right? So I guess the message here is that maybe the numbers don't mean or are not significant, but what's more important about these maps is the information that the local community can use. And again, I mentioned earlier that these maps should be used in prioritizing efforts and resources in the high risk zone. So this is the liquefaction risk and risk of property damage, and it's because these areas have the industrial zones. And then we also did a case study of one barangay. It's a local unit in the Philippines, so where there are a lot of residential areas, industries. And we did a building damage assessment in the case of magnitude 7.1 earthquake. So we mapped 2,000, we classified 2,000 buildings. And these were validated in the field, and almost 42% of the buildings will have a 70% chance of being completely damaged during intensity 8 earthquake. So this is around magnitude 7.2 earthquake. So this follows the fragility curves of the engineering department. And to highlight or to summarize this presentation, so based on our assessment of the geomorphological and geological features, so steep hill slopes are prone to landslide hazards, while low-lying areas are exposed to flood, liquefaction, and ground shaking hazards. Field data, as so far, our field data and semi-quantitative analysis significantly improve the reliability of the susceptibility maps generated. Flood has the highest measure of fatality and covers a wider spatial extent in terms of properties at risk. And in terms of building damage assessment, almost 40% will be completely damaged during magnitude 7.2 earthquake. And thank you.
Okay. Thank you for Professor Ramos' excellent presentation. So next time we open for discussion. We welcome any question and comment. 那我们提问的时候，大概中文、英文都可以了哈。那我们就3位讲者，不晓得大家对这方面有没有什么意见要来做请教的？周老师。
I have a question for Dr. Doug. Yeah, you mentioned that currently you are establishing some kind of monitoring system for the landslide. The second last slide, you just in your summary. Yeah. So will you please describe what's the detail of that? Is already funded to do that, or it's just a planning? The 37
okay.
slide.
Yeah,
the first.
Can you expand? I think for the deep-seated landslide, the 50 sites is already operational for the deep-seated. I don't know. For that project, the target is 50. If we increase or not, we still don't know, because it's quite expensive to do boreholes, but it's possible to extend to other sites. But for this one, it's actually looking for shallow landslides. It's a web base, so we plan to expand it. We don't have proposal yet, but we plan to expand it, because we have only one pilot site in the Rizal province, just one, yeah, and we want to expand it and also include other data set, because this one is mostly statistics based on historical rainfall and landslides, and no geotechnical work. So eventually we might include a factor of safety calculation using a SynMap-based model and integrate it to make it more deterministic, combined.
Okay, thank you. Any question, Dr. Yu?
Thank you very much for Dr. Duck. So my question is that since you deployed the on-site monitoring system, also you use the rainfall-based model to issue the warning to the public. So how do you deal with the false alarm? So, and how about the evacuation rate for the local governments?
Yeah, for that pilot site for the shallow, I think we have 5 events, but 3 are successful. So the 2 not successful one, because the onset is the attention of rains was very low, and the satellite-based rainfall having difficulty predicting low rainfall. It's difficult to calibrate. But then for the deep-seated one, can you, what's the specific question again? Sorry.
The second part is the warning.
Warning, yeah, okay, warning issue. Okay, so for the, I think for the pilot sites, I mean, we have this system that we tell them that partly operational, and eventually the threshold, it will, I mean, still, because threshold, even you establish, it might change. So there's more or less of an error percentage. But for the deep-seated one, since this is a community-based, we have done several warning, and some probably more than 10 evacuations have been, proceeded. But the problem with deep-seated landslide is more complex, because you see movement and it stop, and so it's stop and go, stop and go. Eventually, we had already several warnings on some sites, but we still, but they're still, believe us on, on warning. But we tell them that's depending on the rainfall. If this will continue, it will maybe just progress. But the with this initial data, it stops and warning goes to 0, and then sometime again. So for deep-seated, it's still quite complicated.
Okay, any question?
Okay, and thank you for this very good 3 speakers. And I also have one question to Dr. Da. You try to produce some kind of like potential risk map according to hourly intensity and also the soil moisture. How did you get the information of soil moisture? I mean, for the real site, and if you use some kind of sensors, how did you decide where to put the soil moisture sensors in which part?
For the, if you are talking for the deep-seated landslide, it's a combination of tilt and soil moisture. So right now, we are only using the tilt. The soil moisture is still experimental, because it's a capacitor-based, and it is 0 or 1. There's no range of development. So we put weight on the tilt, not on the soil moisture from the meantime.
Okay, any question? One more question. One more.
Thank you to the presenters. This is not for Dr. Daag. I have a question for Dr. Samuel. And actually, a few years ago, we had a project on early warning system. And the question is on, so there's an event, a landslide event. And the question to us is, when do we start working again after the landslide event? Because it's still the soil is still soft, and they have equipment. They are afraid that the equipment will be damaged. So we try to tell them, don't start until we say the antecedent rainfall is really at this level. We told them maybe wait for 10 days. But it was already, for them it was already very hot and it was not raining and it's already a week. And they started to work and it's landslide again. So I think my question is, for industry, for people working in the field, civil works, etc., do you have research already on when antecedent rainfall will be a factor in saying that civil works can continue? Because you have 7 days, and what is the basis of these 7 days, etc.?
Thank you very much for your question. For the antecedent preceding, we said preceding rainfall for 7 days because in the afternoon later speaker, Dr. Fang, because we deploy different kinds of sensors, we said in the field to monitor the debris flow mechanism. So we also set up some sensors to detect the water content underground. So for the decay rate in the field, we figure out that 7 days descending rainfall is enough for us to, because 7 days accumulated rainfall in the soil will feed back to the triggering the debris flows in Taiwan. So we choose the 7 days. So another question is that we have a case during the Typhoon Morak in southern part of Taiwan. When we issue the warnings, no debris flow comes. So people go to the shelters. Then they think that there's no rain, so they go back. But at that time, debris flow comes. Because after that, some professors went to the field. They find out that there might be a temporary dam because of the landslide, block the rivers in the upstream areas, but no one knows that. Then after that, no rain, but the dam just broke, so debris flow comes. So far, now the Professor Jen from the Cheng Kung University, we set up some criteria. It's important we tell the people when to go to the shelter. It's also very important for us to tell them when you can go back to your home. So we got the mechanism according to the rainfall, according to the time, something like that. But it's still very hard to deal with the temporary dam. So in the national level, during the emergency, we use different kinds of remote sensing technologies. For example, the satellite image. We also use the SAR image that it can penetrate the weather. So we know where is the temporary dam. So we just locate it to do the simulation, the run out affected areas. So tell the people to evacuate it to safe shelters. So something like that. But it's still very ongoing. It's a hard work for us to do. Thank you.
Okay. So due to the time is limitation, so this session is completed. So we give Dr. Yin, Dr. Doug, and Professor Ramos a big hand again.
Thanks to all the speakers, and also thanks to our chairman, Dr. Wang. Now, okay, thank you for the very insightful speeches. And now we will have a coffee break for 20 minutes. Please move backward. And next session will begin at 10:50. Please come back in time. Thank you, and please enjoy the coffee break. Thank you. 我们下一个 session 会在10:50开始，请各位准时回座，谢谢。